There was a gal at the beginning who was talking about bone broth. She said, you know what, I put carrots in my bone broth for taste purposes, and they get really pulverized, I guess, when it's under that constant heat for such a long period of time. And she was looking at, well, what is I make my own bone broth, I take the carrots out, but I'm gonna guess there's probably carbs in there. And then how would you test, how do I know that? Well, first of all, I love that you make your own bone broth. It's something that if you've read the book any way you can, my friend who was the first person who really unpacked and taught me how, or taught my mom how to make bone broth that gelled at room temperature. That's a lot of glucosamine chondroitin, really putting a high density of nutrients into bone broth. Kettle and Fire is the other place that I really have found they do a great job of keeping the nutrients in the bone broth. But I want you to, when you make it at home, to do what I did when I tested out Kettle and Fire, when I test out, recipes from other people, is that I check the numbers. So she said, well, how do you know if there's carbs in there? And so here's what I would do. I would do an experiment with yourself, and that is if you have a blood meter, you need a blood meter to test this. So if you're not to that level yet, it's not that many carbs, you're going to be fine. But the teachable moment is to say, I love the feedback that patients get when they are on a ketogenic journey and they have the ability to check their numbers, not to post it all over the internet or like I do, but really just for themselves to know. So if you you wake up one morning and you're going to do a baseline test for yourself. You're going to check your numbers, you're going to drink a glass of water, and then you're going to check your numbers again an hour later. You can do it half an hour later. 30 minutes is probably good. So you have morning numbers and then numbers 30 minutes after a glass of water. The next morning you get up, you're going to drink your bone broth. So you're going to test your numbers on an empty stomach, and then 30 minutes later you're going to check your numbers again. And just watch what the difference is that your body does when you have a bone broth versus a water. So the other place that I really use this teachable moment is when people say, well, I have coffee with stevia in it, and I read on the internet that stevia doesn't cause a sugar spike. And I'm like, you're right, it's a really low glycemic stimulus. You win, that's true. But let's look at it in you. So let's have you drink water, and then the next day have you drink black coffee, and then the next day have you drink your coffee with your stevia in it. And look at the difference between your numbers. And again, I don't need to be the one who teaches you. Your body will show you. It's going to be more powerful and more accurate than all of the scientific data that's out there. When I go to look at somebody's numbers and I'm filtering through the studies I've read and what this does and how to do this, it still comes down to taking that situation the patient's in right now and then using the science to filter what's the best scientific literature got to say. Oh yeah, and then look at the patient's numbers and right in front of me. Those three things kind of gelled together really teach us how do we know if this is a good substance for the patient or not. So when somebody writes in and says, I like to make my bone broth, I'm like, good job. Use bones that you think taste good, the more marrow that's in there, awesome. I think the secret hack is throwing in chicken feet. And you get a lot of glucosamine chondroitin in there, and you'll know you did a really good job when you really hit a gelatinous a substance, if you would. But then test my work. Don't take my word for it any more than anybody else. Maybe your body doesn't care that there's a few carbs in there. You had very little change in your glucose ketone index from what happened with water versus what happened with black coffee versus what happened with bone broth. And if you want the answer for you, that's how you test it. I found that it empowers people to say, well, this is what I can have on a ketogenic diet. I do net carbs and not whole carbs. I'm like, great. If you're at the season of life where you can afford a few carbohydrates, your body doesn't overproduce insulin, and it doesn't tuck that inflammatory process into a spiral trap, that's a win. People shouldn't be as sensitive as they are. But if I look at the population study of the people coming to the ketogenic diet, wanting help off of these medications, they are not at a place where they have the privilege of talking about net carbs. they are total carbs until we are healthy. And once you're healthy, we use your blood markers within yourself to say, how well is my body doing?
Please subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos. Stay tuned.